one of the things that really interests me about ayahuasca that's different when you think about it from the Western perspective is that if you just take the West Coast psychedelic underground, that they were exposed to plant medicines early on. So in the 1950s, when LSD was making its way through a few research networks and the CIA was having fun with it, etc., Bohemians here would take peyote. So they'd go down, they get a truck, they'd go down to Texas, and they'd take peyote buttons and do their thing. I mean, there was peyote use here I know at least in the late 40s. And then, when mushrooms came in the 1970s and in the 60s, people started to figure out that there were psychoactive mushrooms that were in the region. And in the 70s, there was, people started to grow. So we've had these plant substances that do have, or did have, ethnographic structures of ritual and connecting. But for the most part, those didn't really make it into the way that Westerners were using these things. With a few exceptions, people would go down to Oaxaca or whatever. But for the most part, people were doing the DIY thing. But there's something interesting about ayahuasca, which is that even people who approach it who aren't necessarily interested in diving into the mythic universe of Amazonian peoples or who are really going for the gods, people who are approaching it maybe from a more psychoactive perspective or psychological perspective, psychospiritual perspective, or more secular minded, nonetheless, almost everybody does it in a structure. And they do it in a structure that is ritualistic, that has a container, that has an intelligence to it. And that, to me, is really remarkable, that you haven't seen a sort of spin-off of just kind of totally random DIY ayahuasca use. That even in Western circles where people are staying, they're not going down to the jungle, they're doing things here. Even ones who don't, I'm not a shaman, I'm just creating a structure. But those structures are deeply religious and magical in their dynamics. And that, to me, as much as the plant or the connection to nature is really key, that there's something about this particular medicine that demands a coherent group structure with some kind of central figure who isn't necessarily a shaman, but at the very least is holding the space, and also the role of music and sound. That the way in which sound becomes, is so integral to the process that you're not really going to want to do it on your own if there's somebody who's not capable of singing your way through it, even if they're developing their own songs, which is also happening. And we're, if you could do, it's unfortunate that we can't do it, is to do it, a current ethnography of Western shamanic circles where either shamans are coming up from South America, or you have urban, mestizos who have their own things that are mixed up with Western learning that they had as kids, and then they're bringing it to North America, or North Americans who are picking these things up. Is that there's all sorts of things that are evolving, songs, structures, layers of meaning, but even if they're very different, there's this core structure that the plant seems to demand, and that aspect of it, I think, is really is a sign of something new, a sign of something else is happening.